Are you stuck in a job or just feel like you get up and do the same thing every day and you can't wait till you get off work and this is how your life is going to have to be until you retire or something like that? Well, guess what? You don't have to stay stuck in something that you're miserable in. And today's guest is going to give you some really good, awesome advice. And she speaks from the heart. She speaks like straight. She doesn't like, fluff things around or whatever. In fact, part of her title is No BS. So grab a pen, get ready to make some notes, get ready to hear some advice that's going to maybe make you feel hopeful and realize that you can make a change. It's okay, right? So stay tuned. Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Best Advice Podcast Show. I'm your host, Angela Watley. Our guest today is so awesome because she's so she's on point. She's, no BS. She doesn't hold anything back. And she's so wise. Her name is Diana Alt, and she's a no BS career strategy coach. And she has some good insight for us. So be prepared to take some notes, you guys. Welcome, Diana.
Hey, thanks for having me, Angela. I'm glad to be here.
So why no BS?
You know, um, my clients gave it to me.
Oh,
So I've always been I'm like this interesting combination of direct and pragmatic, but encouraging, like all wrapped up together. And a lot of people don't think of those going together. And so over time, I started to hear different words from the clients because I've been coaching for a long time. When I heard that, when some couple people independently that didn't know each other said, like, I just love how you are no bullshit, you are no BS. I decided to latch onto it for a brand because why not? So, and then I've had people say, you should say no fluff because, like, my primary platform is LinkedIn. People think, oh, is that professional? And I'm like, that's exactly what people are craving. They're craving realness. They're not craving sanitized. So that's how I got there. And
yeah.
no one has ever asked me that on a podcast.
Really?
They've asked me it in general,
Yeah.
like friends like, oh, how'd you land on that? No one has asked me on a podcast 5 minutes after I met them.
Yeah. So how'd you get into
So
career coaching anyway? Were you unhappy with your job and found a way
It's
out or
a
something?
it was like an evolution over a long period of time. So I'll try to tell it fairly quickly. So I started my career right before the dot-com bubble burst in the early 2000s. So I got out of college. I'm almost 50, so I'm like 24 years old with a freshly minted master's degree. And just under 2 years after I started my career, the dot-com bubble started bursting. I got laid off, found another job quickly through a referral, got laid off again, and then that second one was hard. So at the very beginning, I was helping my friends and myself by learning how can we navigate this market because we were all like 2 years of experience competing with people with 10 years, two kids, and a mortgage while we were single for the same money because there was a lot of desperation.
Yeah.
It was much worse for all the news headlines we hear about the tech market just now, right now. It
Yeah.
was much, much worse, especially for earlier career people. So that was sort of the origin. I just wanted to help my friends. I'm kind of like that. And then during the Great Recession, I was actually involved in a professional organization here in Kansas City called the IIBA. I was an IT business analyst at the time. And we did some career workshops. Like we did a resume fundraiser. We did, a few different things. And that's when I really started talking to people about, I know the market is bad, but you should at least try to get a job you're going to like instead of just getting any job. And then a couple of years later, I was miserable in a job. My husband was miserable in a job. We were both trying to get out, and then boom, he got a brain tumor and died. So from that point, it became existential.
Ready to transform your life or just tired of feeling stuck? Conquer stress, boost confidence, overcome fears, and more. Unlock your potential with a private mindset coaching session with Angela. Your breakthrough begins here. Visit newmindsetnow.com. So don't wait, book your session now.
Like, we are not wasting time on earth in crappy jobs if we can avoid it. So yeah, ever since then I've always been trying to help people be their best. And then about 11 years ago, I had my first people come to me and say, I want to give you money. I was like, I can get money for this? All right, I'll do that. And so I started working with job search coaching, helping people target effectively. And it's evolved. The ethos of my business is that work should feel good, not like a long, slow march to oblivion.
Yeah.
So I work with people on figuring out what would make them happier, working through job searches, a lot of that in 2023 and 2024, because there's been a lot of layoffs. And then also I work with people like on executive and leadership coaching. So we want to, you might have a job that you like, but you want to love it, or you want to perform better and get promoted. So that's what my whole business is about.
Wow.
Because I grew up, I was raised by teachers and farmers.
Yeah.
And those are like the only other thing I can think of that's more of an identity-based profession is being a pastor.
Yeah.
So I lived in a home with these people that, came from that background. And so work has always been very important to me. And I
Yeah.
think it is to most people. So you can't have a good life if your work life sucks.
Yeah.
So here we are.
I'm sorry for your loss, and it seems like it was like a turning point for you.
It was a little bit of a turning point, that's for sure. I also think that I was a much harder person. Like, I had a lot more sharp edges, and for a lot of us as we get older, some of those edges get knocked off. But I feel like I accelerated in like wisdom, maturity, and corners getting knocked off by like 25 years.
Yeah.
Whenever, I lost my husband when I was 34 years old. So.
Mhm. So I think sometimes, we're so used to getting to the routine, just getting up, dragging ourselves to work, dragging ourselves home or whatever, and you never think like, maybe I should be doing something another way, right? So for those people who may not necessarily encounter anything that, requires them to make a turning point in their lives, what advice would you give to the person who doesn't realize that they're stuck, they're unhappy, but they're stuck, but there's hope?
Oh, so I think that the most important thing, I love that question. That's a really good question. The thing that most people forget that they have in their life is agency. So a lot of what I'm reminding people of, and most of my clients, there are a lot of people that have less agency, if they're working much lower paying jobs or like have very difficult socioeconomic background. I work mostly with college educated white collar professionals making over $100,000 a year. So my demo is a little bit different. And I want people to keep that in mind. Like, don't come after me. Don't come after me. Don't come after Angela. But the thing is that like there's a lot of people that even though they're making a lot of money, they don't realize that they have a lot of agency because we get lulled into this thing of I have to do what the boss says, or I have to keep this lifestyle, this material lifestyle going because my wife and my kids need it. And half the time when you're in a really difficult job, like your wife and kids don't care about it. They'd rather have dad home or mom home. So I like to remind people all the time of their agency. And I talk a lot to clients about what can you control and what can't you control, which when people aren't used to talking about that, it can feel like a little bit of a downer. Like when I point out, here are all the things you cannot control in a job search, they don't love it. But when I then turn around and point out, here's the things you can influence in a job search, it starts to feel better. So I like to remind people their life is theirs and they can control their own actions and the thoughts they have between their two ears. And that's about it, but that's enough.
Yeah.
So that's my take.
Do you help people all over the country, or is it like
I
just...
do. I focus on the US market. I've done some work with some people in Europe and Canada, but I focus on the US market primarily because I know more about work culture here, job search processes here, employment law here. Like, I'm not an attorney, but I at least know some of the things that people have rights to.
Yeah.
So I've had people, right now I'm in Kansas City. I have clients that are in Texas, Oregon, Washington, California,
Yeah.
where else? A few other places right now. Like I'm drawing a
Yeah.
blank right now, but I've had people all over. So
I'm not sure if other states do this, but I know New York now shows salary on job listings.
mhm.
Have you seen that?
I've seen that, and there's a lot of states and cities that are requiring it, and I have a love-hate relationship with it actually, Angela,
Yeah, I was going to ask you
because
what the impact was that
yeah, there's some things that I like about it. I mean, people can at least ballpark it. I work with a lot of people that are in roles that have a really wide possible range of pay.
yeah.
Like if you think about the role of project manager, even in tech, if you're at an entry, it's one of those things where you could be like project manager for many years and not go up to they don't a lot of times some companies don't have like junior project manager or associate
Mhm.
project manager and then project manager and then senior and then principal. Like not
Yeah.
everybody does that. So you can just be a project manager for a couple of decades. But there's a big difference between when you just, you're 2 years out of school and you coordinate projects that are a $60,000 budget and you're making $67,000 because you got the raise last year, and the people that are managing multi-million-dollar projects and they make 250, 300K a year. So it can be really difficult for people that are in some of the types of roles I work with. So in that respect, the salary can help, but also some of the laws are so weird. Putting on do not disturb. Not to do that so we don't listen to Jings. Some of the ranges are so wide that they end up not necessarily being useful.
Yeah.
And so that is basically the company trying to comply with the law. But the reality is, for some roles, people are trying to comprise a team and they
Mhm.
have a team budget. So individuals seeking a job feel like everything is really individualized. But if you zoom out a little bit and you look at a director of software engineering, for example, and they need some new resources on their team to do, website development or app development or whatever, and they have a payroll budget of, $300,000 fully loaded, including all the benefits and stuff. Well, if you get a the principal software engineer that is amazing and can mentor people and like is faster and like
Yeah.
has, those higher level strategic impacts, that might eat up your whole budget. But
Yeah.
you might be able to get two people that have 5 years of experience that are good enough, and they will want to make sure that they're hiring the right person that can grow with the company and is a culture add and like all those things. And so that director might say, you know what, like I'm thinking one, but if I find people that are younger, more junior, and I can fit too, and we can make it work, then I'm
Yeah.
gonna do that. And that's why some of those pay ranges are really wide and
Yeah.
they become confusing. The standard advice when you're a hiring manager is you always try to secure the highest budget you can for a role,
Yeah.
but then be open to, if I find someone more junior, you're not, if someone says that their pay range is 120 to 250 because they're open to these different levels, if you come in and normally you would be on the lower end, you're not going to get 250 when you're on the lower end of experience. So
Yeah.
they're complying with the law,
Right.
but it gets messy. Sorry to ramble, but
No.
there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
So the companies that are in the roles that it makes sense to have narrower ranges, I think that's when it's helpful. When it's like, okay, we're working in like a 15% range here. That's amazing. That's very cool. That's meaningful to people whenever they're applying. It makes sense. My favorite thing, though, that I've seen is with so much remote work, I know it's not all remote anymore. More people are going back to hybrid and fully in the office, but there are a lot of companies that have come up with tiering. Because
Mm.
another reason why the salary ranges would be huge is because, well, if I'm hiring from all over the country, I'm going to use like in market salary ranges. I'm not going to pay the same thing for someone in New York as I am for someone in Kansas City. the best companies will say, I have tier 1 cities, tier 2 cities, and tier 3 cities. So that like New York, Seattle, San Francisco is in one band, and then maybe like Chicago is in the second band, and then like all the more, rural, like Kansas City usually is in the third band whenever people do that. So those are awesome.
That makes a lot of
Because
sense,
you
actually.
can, you can actually tell what you don't want to see the bottom of the Kansas City be in the bottom of the range, and then the top of Seattle
Yeah.
being the top of the range. That's not helpful. So
So with all those variables, all those different things, what are like the 3 things you see people like waste the most time on when they do job search?
Oh, okay. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is busy work masquerading as a job search. So a lot of recruiters and career coaches will call that spray and pray. But what people do is they will go into comfortable activities that don't stretch them, but don't actually move the needle. So the way that manifests is people will get laid off or decide that they're disgusted with their boss. They're a project manager in financial services right now, and they never think about what they want or even really deeply what they don't like, other than their boss was a jerk to them, or they would like to not be on the streets because they want to eat and live indoors after their layoff.
Yeah.
So they will just update their resume with the last couple of things that they did, from whenever the last time they applied for jobs was. And then they'll just start spraying to everywhere. They'll go to Indeed and they'll type in project manager and they'll get umpteen things, and then they just hit easy apply. That is busy work masquerading as a job search, because you're beige, like you're talking to nobody, because you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall instead of saying, oh, I'm dialed in. If all I did was speak clearly to financial services, assuming you want to stay in there, and then search on whatever job boards or whatnot for financial services project managers, you change the game, because now you're talking the language of the people that are hiring. Somebody in healthcare is not going to understand the type of projects that you did in financial services as well, unless you change how you talk about them. So that's one of them.
Okay.
Another one is not following up. So a surprising number of people do not follow up.
Yeah.
And it's wild. And so I like to tell people, I literally just I have a new lead magnet coming out, or a new like little mini training that's the top 8 job search mistakes holding you back. And the thing that people do is they get so afraid of rejection, or they get so afraid of quote unquote bugging people, that they will not follow up. They're constantly waiting on other people. So I tell people to think like that sales rep that busts quota every quarter. Because even if you're in IT or something like that, like your job search is a sales and marketing project. So you need to act like the sales rep that busts quota, and they have a specific protocol. For this size of deal, I will send this many follow-ups, or it'll be, phone calls or emails or whatever the protocol is that they set up. And then they'll just do it. It's not a decision anymore. Salesforce sends them a task that says, you got to do this today. And so they do it. So I tell people to try to think about that. And then the last one is worrying about stuff they can't control, which I touched on a little bit earlier. So you can't control if the recruiter, you can't control if the recruiter's going to call you after you apply. You can't control if you're going to get the offer. You can't control if they're going to lowball you. You can't control if your friend that you asked to, refer you in for the job is actually going to do it. None of that stuff is in control. But all this other stuff, like tailoring your resume, deciding what you really want, following up, trying to do the things, and not letting all the other nonsense of what other people are doing get to you, that moves the needle. And here's the quick tip, because this one's so important. I really think the control thing is the knowing what you can and can't control is literally the most important thing in life. I mean, in life, not just in a job search. When you're in a search, and if you're feeling anxious because you want to figure out how you're going to be not draining all your retirement savings and your 401k, just think, who owns the next decision? Who owns the next decision in this process? Is it me? If it's me, then do what you can do. If it's somebody else, then you've got to make like Elsa and let it go. Now, that's not to say be passive or a doormat,
Right.
but if the next action is, well, I had this interview and the recruiter told me she was going to get back to me next Thursday or Friday, then
Yeah.
you calendar, let's give them a little fluff. You never know, somebody might be out sick. On Monday, you're following up.
Yeah.
That's within your influence.
Right.
But whether they're ever going to get back to you is not, but you can at least say, oh, my follow-up is, if I haven't heard after this date.
Right.
And then you do it, and then you ask yourself again, what's my part? Well, my part now is to wait for that recruiter to follow up.
Yeah.
And maybe you have set a protocol for yourself that says, well, I'm going to set another reminder for myself to check back in another week or two, just
Right.
in case I haven't heard anything. So that's kind of the dance back and forth between being a doormat and being super anxious because you're trying to control the universe.
What do you think about using one resume versus trying to tailor your resume to the jobs you're applying for?
I am on Team Tailor, but I think a lot of people don't understand what tailoring is. So the way I talk to people, a lot of people that say, oh, I spent an hour and a half tailoring my, no, you didn't. You like remade the whole dress. Like tailoring is when you have to take your pants up an inch.
Right.
But what a lot of people are trying to do with their resume, because they never really thought about what niche am I going after? And how do I make my baseline starter resume talk to that niche?
Right.
They don't think about that. So it's like they're remaking their whole wedding dress,
Yeah.
which takes hours and days and hundreds of dollars every time they apply.
Yeah.
So if you define for yourself a clear target, and it doesn't have to be like so that only 5 jobs ever would apply,
Right.
but it needs to be bigger than I'm going to Indeed, typing in project manager and sending in a generic project manager resume. Most people that actually do an effective baseline resume and they are focused on applying to a tighter range of jobs,
Yeah.
find they only need 2 to 10 minutes to tailor.
Okay. And what are your thoughts about Easy Apply? Because I think that's on like LinkedIn and other things too. Is Easy Apply, is it seen as lazy to the hiring person, or?
It's not, I don't even know if they know.
Okay.
To be honest, I haven't that's a really good question. And I know a lot of recruiters, so I might have to ask them, what do you see? But the problem with Easy Apply is there's a couple problems with it. Number one is that is one of the things that leads to busy work masquerading as a job search, because people get lulled into this, oh, I can churn out volume quickly.
Yeah.
All of my happiest clients applied to less jobs. Because they dialed in what they wanted. Now, the degree you can dial in, the degree that you can be picky varies depending on your financial situation. And also, some people just need to work, from a mental health perspective, they don't want to sit at home or whatnot. But the Easy Apply makes it easy to skip the steps of actually evaluating, am I qualified? Over 90% of resumes that a lot of my friends that are in tech recruiting are getting all of this year, all of last year, don't even meet the basic qualifications because people aren't even reading. They aren't even reading. People, I have friends that they work at an ed tech company related to nursing. They'll tell you that the vast majority of the people applying for these jobs that require nurse educator credentials, which is a pretty high degree of education, they have never even been a nurse. They haven't ever worked in healthcare. It happens all the time. They're just like, okay, well, consultant, I was a consultant, and they don't pay any attention.
Yeah.
And then also people will skip the tailoring because usually when there's some sort of Easy Apply thing going on, it's like whatever resume is stored in the system as the primary resume is the one that's going. So, maybe it'll work if the only thing you're applying for is jobs that meet, they're really aligned. If you have a financial services project manager resume and all you're looking at on LinkedIn or wherever is financial services project managers that are at your level, and you do a quick look and go, yep, I got all that, required stuff, and then you hit Easy Apply, you might be okay. But most people aren't doing that. And the same thing goes for, there's tools out there now that will automatically apply for you. don't do those. Because number one, you don't know what they're doing with your data to train their AI.
Yeah.
And number two, it's taking you out of like, it's again, it falls in that. Now we're doing busy work masquerading at a job search that's just faster.
Right.
Well, doing the same stupid thing faster doesn't make it smart.
Right. Okay.
So anyway, that's some of my takes. That's some of my hot takes.
Well, this has been super helpful, and I'm sure you've like answered a lot of questions that even people didn't realize they had, which is a
Oh,
good
well,
thing.
you picked some good ones to ask.
Oh,
Because
thank you.
most, I really, you're clearly very good at this.
Oh,
So,
thank you, Diana.
but not perfect. We don't do perfect.
Yeah, perfection does not exist. So I do have one more question for you. It
Sure.
doesn't have to be related to, what we talked about at all. What is the one, in all your experience of everything, what's the one best piece of advice that you would give another woman watching today?
Ooh, I think it actually does relate to something I said before.
Okay.
And that is focus on what you can control. That list is shorter than you think, and make like Elsa and let the rest go. When you can truly embrace that, which takes time. I studied Stoicism for a few years because that's a major, major tenet of the philosophy of Stoicism. It took me 6 months of like reading on this almost daily in order to get there. But when I did, it kind of opened things up. I'm not perfect because that doesn't exist. I still, find myself anxious over things I can't control sometimes. But it is a game changer when you can really start to adopt it, especially for people that have kids. Because if you can acknowledge that, yes, I'm responsible for these little beings and getting them to be functional adults, but I'm not responsible. Like, I cannot control what they do. I can only influence them and show them the way. I think it changes the game. So,
Wow.
there you go.
I love that. I love that.
Do you have kids?
I don't.
I don't
But
either.
I think the
I have kids in my
control,
life, but I'm not a parent. So,
yeah, I'm a cat parent, a pet parent.
well,
But
you can't control your cat. I mean, come on.
yeah,
If there's any creature on the planet that will demonstrate they cannot be controlled, it's a cat.
that's true. I have some good ones, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not being able to control doesn't mean it's not bad.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
continue. I know you're trying to wrap up because you keep your podcast short, but we'll talk later.
Yeah. So this was awesome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
And for you guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Share this with someone that you care about, because you never know if somebody like secretly is miserable or hates their job and they're just not telling you, right? So share this, and as always, keep growing and keep going.